for. This park was established in 1902 before logging companies got to the crest of the Cascade Range. So we've got trees, even along this trail, that are more than 1,000 years old, some of the white bark pine trees. Now, the person watching over our forest is our botanist, and her name is Jen. Everybody say nice to meet you, Jen.
Nice to meet you.
The pleasure is all mine. So, Jen's our park botanist. Now, we've got 16 different kinds of evergreen trees growing in this park, but Jen spends most of her time trying to protect just one type of tree that is dying off. It's the white bark pine. You see these 3 dead trees right here? These are white bark pines that were alive when I began working here 10 years ago. And before I tell you what's killing these trees and how Jen is trying to save them, let's talk about why these trees are worth saving. What's really cool about white bark pines, it's not their longevity, it's how these trees are born. So here's some white bark pine cones. They're very hard, and unlike other pine cones, they don't open up by themselves to release their seeds. Do you have any idea how the seeds of the white bark pine would ever find their way into the soil?
Fire.
Fire?
Animals.
Animals?
Wind.
What's that?
Wind.
Wind. That's a good guess.
Earthworms.
What?
Earthworms.
Earthworms. That's a good theory. Well, it turns out the only way these trees can reproduce, the only way, is with the friendly cooperation of a bird called a nutcracker. I can actually hear them. Hear them right now. That's a Clark's nutcracker. Look at the beak on this bird. Very sharp. They can hammer into these cones and extract the tasty seeds. In fact, these cones right here, they've already had their seeds removed. Pass these around. Start one over here. Now, the Clark's nutcracker feeds almost exclusively on white bark pine seeds. But the cones are ripe only once a year in August. So right now, our nutcrackers are hard at work, hammering into the cones, harvesting all of the seeds, a few of which they eat on the spot, but most of which they hide in the ground, in the soil for later. One nutcracker will bury about 30,000 seeds every summer, usually in groups of 2 or 3 or 4. And somehow they can remember the precise location of almost every seed. I can barely find my car keys in the morning. But some of the seeds never get retrieved, and they grow into white bark pines. So every white bark pine you see in the park was planted by a forgetful bird. And that's why they typically grow in clusters with several trunks emerging from the same spot, because that's where a Clark's nutcracker buried 3 white bark pine seeds. So what a cool relationship between a tree and a bird that depend on each other for their mutual survival. So if we lose our white bark pine trees, we're also going to lose these amazing birds. So what's killing these trees? And by the way, about half of our white bark pines, half of these trees are either dead or dying. And eventually we think we're going to lose almost all of them. So what's killing them off? Earthworms? Well, it's mainly a fungus. It's a non-native fungus that was brought to this continent from Europe 100 years ago in a boat across the Atlantic Ocean, brought here by accident. And now that it's here, it spreads on its own via wind-borne spores. It causes a disease called blister rust, white pine blister rust. The trees appear to have these rust-colored blisters on their branches. That's the first sign something is wrong. And there's no cure for this fungal disease. Once a tree's infected, it might live for a few years, but eventually it's going to die. However, there is a ray of hope. We think that maybe 2 to 3% of our white bark pines have a natural genetic ability to resist the fungus, to resist infection. And right now, Jen is busy trying to figure out which individual trees those are. She hikes around the park every August looking for big, healthy trees. When she finds one, she grabs one of its cones, hammers it open, and mails the seeds off to a nursery outside the park, where they germinate them and they grow them into little seedlings. And after a few years, they put the seedlings into this gas chamber device and expose them to the airborne fungus to find out whether or not they'll survive. If they do survive the gas chamber, then Jen goes back the following summer to that same mother tree. She gathers all of that tree's cones, mails the seeds off to the nursery, they grow them into seedlings, and for the past 6 years, Jen's been planting fungus-resistant white bark pine trees around the park. So we're trying to regrow the forest before the current trees all die off. Does that make sense? Now, normally in a national park, we don't go around planting trees. We let nature take its course. But this might be the only way to save the white bark pine and the Clark's nutcracker. And time is not on our side. These trees grow very, very slowly. They don't even get cones until they're at least 80 years old.
Wow.
So everybody say, good luck, Jen. She's gonna need it.
Wow.
Okay, so other than trees, what else do we have in this park? Well, the trees all grow out of the rocks, right? So let's keep walking, and I want to introduce you to the park's geologist next.